And then we have a department like Commerce, where the head of utilities and the head of banking answer directly to the governor. So as we begin the process of creating these much more efficient bureaucracies, we realize huge savings because we now have central administration. And so we don't have bureaucracies, multiple bureaucracies with multiple secretarial pools, that type of thing. But then regents, the head of regents would answer directly to the governor. The head of cultural affairs would answer directly to the governor. And the head of the traditional K-12 Department of Education would answer directly to the governor. Well, each of them has their own separate bureaucracy. So cultural affairs is its own separate fiefdom, and regents is its own separate fiefdom, and they each have their own separate administrations and own separate secretarial pools. So in some instances, we would have a top-down bureaucracy, and in other instances, we would simply have, we would collapse the administration, but where appropriate, we would have the head of the division answering directly to the governor, because that's what's going to make the most sense. So education is another state agency we have. Department of Health is our third state agency. Now, the Department of Health, and we have to understand that when we look at, we'll bring this back. When we look at two departments, they are particularly linked to the federal bureaucracy. Two departments especially. DHS and the Department of Public Health. And at the federal level, we have the U.S. Department. Am I going too high to right? Health and Human Services. And so our Department of Health and our Department of Human Services really is very much entangled with this one federal bureaucracy. And so what we do is we define clear roles for each one of these state agencies. We dissolve the lines to health, and we take the relevant divisions and bureaus that should be over here, and we create full alignment between the Federal Department of Health and Human Services and DHS, and then we take the Department of Health and we make it into a much more relevant state bureaucracy. What? Did we have two things going on at the same time? I think we had two things going on at the same time here. Okay.
You just need to grab that. There you go.
There we go. We're still mastering the learning curve. What we do with the Department of Health is we truly make it a Department of Health focused on addressing lifestyle and obesity-induced disease, promoting health and nutrition, And we create meaningful collaborations between county health departments and, disease-based advocacy associations like the Diabetes Association and the Heart Association. And we also do something else that is long overdue. We take the health and nutrition components within our Iowa State Extension Services, and we embed them within the county health departments. And this now allows us to truly promote a healthy Iowa. Now, if anyone's ever heard me talk about the federal health care bill, I've often described it as the Walmart Enrichment Act of 2009. I simply do not believe that that piece of legislation is going to accomplish what folks intend. I just simply do not. Beyond that, the legislation really doesn't address health. If we want to talk about what's needed to promote a healthy Iowa, folks need to eat better, they need to exercise, they need to lose weight, they need to make better choices. And government can't mandate it. It might be able to help facilitate it. It might be able to participate in educating folks, but it can't mandate it, it can't order it, it can't legislate it. So we have a much different Department of Health than exists now, but it's one that really, I think, becomes more functional in the long run. Economic development and commerce. We talked about some of the bureaucracies. We would collapse into that. But again, significant savings and significant efficiencies are created now. It's not just that we're merging these departments to create savings, but we're also merging these departments to improve services. Now, we're not necessarily going to go through every single one of the 9 departments, but this one is the one I want to stop on, because this is a prime example of the danger of bureaucracies. Bureaucracies cannot serve if they do not exist. It's just a simple truth. If a bureaucracy does not exist, if a Department of Education doesn't exist, if a Department of Commerce doesn't exist, it cannot provide services to individuals. That doesn't mean it should exist. It just simply means if it doesn't exist, it cannot serve. So the top priority of bureaucrats becomes, we must exist if we are to serve. And this is where leadership must play a critical role. If you have an Iowa Department of Economic Development, and we do, and you have an Iowa Department of Commerce, and we do, they cannot truly work together, or someone like me comes along and says, well, why are they 2 separate departments? Now, if the Department of Education and the Department of Corrections work together, no one ever says, why don't we just merge education with corrections? Because we clearly understand the unique mission of each of these bureaucracies. But when economic development and commerce work together, we don't understand why they're 2 separate bureaucracies, and that means one of them might have to die. And this is when that rule kicks in. But if we don't exist, we cannot serve. Therefore, we can never collaborate in a meaningful capacity. Public safety and corrections and the Law Enforcement Academy and public defense and criminal juvenile justice and within the Department of Human Rights cannot truly exist within the same conversations consistently without the threat of some of those bureaucracies dying. And so turf becomes a primary governing consideration. We've got to protect our turf. Now, this exists at the federal level, exists within the private sector in instances, because why should I have two separate entities if one will